Hello, everybody. Sorry about that. I got some issues with this thing here. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'll start this like I always start with a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, I come to you in prayer, Lord. I ask that you put a guard at my lips, Clay, that I may not speak against you. Lord, I also hope that you will use my words to uplift those that need uplifted and encourage those that need to be encouraged. Lord, I ask as always in your name, and I also want to give you the glory in this podcast and give you the glory in my chaplaincy and give you the glory in my ministry at Narrowway Independent Baptist Church. Lord, give you glory in all things. And Lord, I want to thank you for taking me and waiting on me, Lord, to come back to you. In Jesus' holy name I pray, amen. So, um, I can't see anything that's going on. So, um, the, a funny thought came into my head a second ago, and it's while I was praying, and being that I am in enforcement and being that I am a chaplain and a pastor, but more so that I'm in law enforcement, people are used to seeing me act a certain way throughout my police career. So naturally, policemen are really hard on one another, right? So, um, and I'm sure I was sitting here thinking, I'm sure there are those that say, I'm just curious to see how far he takes this, right? I'm curious to see how far this goes, if it lasts. Well, we're going on moving in closer to a year, and I haven't went back to the old me. And the old me, which drank all the time, and and for those of you that don't know, that may be new, we or I, um, have on Easter Sunday quit drinking. Okay, it was up to 4 to 5 bottles a week of bourbon, and I would chug them pretty much. I mean, and all that was, covering up for an underlying issue, right? And that issue being trauma through the job. There are a lot of cops that think, um, you know, if I don't have trauma, why do you have trauma? Or you're weak for saying that you even have trauma to begin with, right? And if you're in law enforcement, listen to this, or you're in the fire service. I was talking to somebody, her husband was in the fire service, but if you are in one of those lines of work, even EMS, even like hospitals, emergency rooms, stuff like that, you are considered weak if you admit that this stuff bothers you. Now, I don't want to get too much into some of the things that because most of us that are going to be listening are familiar. But this again is this time of year where it's very what's that thing doing? Okay, it's very a lot of people suffer from um, depression and multiple other things at this time of year, and why is that? That is because it's a holiday. You've got 2 big ones in a row, and then you got New Year's, and if you've lost somebody, which we all have that, then you have the Thanksgiving dinner, which is family oriented. That person may not be there this year. Then you have, Christmas, which was again family oriented, and you may not be there this year. So, I, and then you go into the new year, and then that just reminds you the new year that you don't have that person, right? So it's a time of emotional turbulence for a lot of people, and they don't um, sometimes feel like they can express that, or they have to feel the need to continually validate their own feelings, and that's not something that you should have to do. Really, you shouldn't even try to do, right? You want to um, you know. Uh, it's like I'm beating a dead horse, but if fire, police, EMS, ER, just any nurse, any hospital, they all experience things that are very, like, people don't ordinarily see and shouldn't have to see. And if people would follow the Lord, then most of the time we probably wouldn't have to see them things. But they insist on being evil and vulgar and, just depraved. The amount of things that are going on, in the world, if y'all have noticed the uptick in the amount of sexual assaults of children going on, it's becoming more and more and more common. Um, and the over sexualization of children, even in some of the schools. Um, I was watching on the news, and they were talking about this one school, and they got drugged before I think I forget what state it was in, but anyway, it was disgusting. They had a book that was made available to the kids, that showed nude photos of grown people in a kid's book, right? And it was cartoon videos, cartoon, right? Cartoon videos, or sorry, cartoon photos again with the photos. So that if you have children and you are a Christian, then if you haven't noticed the direct and outright assault on our kids, then I don't know what you've been paying attention to, right? So you have to pay attention to what your kids are being taught. Now, I think state law, wherever state that happened, they were required to, notify the parents in the event that um, they would be teaching that stuff and allow kids to opt out of that, or the parents to opt out of that, and they didn't. And so then they got in trouble, and then, of course, they crawfished and, I mean, but the damage has already been done, right? And I'm sure they're sent back thinking, "I've already showed your kids that." And I'll pose this to anybody that agrees with that. Like, you're teaching kids that it's okay, and without your parents' permission, to think you're a girl or a boy, to exclude the parents in any kind of decision. First off, kids, most of the time that they're talking about, are too young to even know the difference. I mean, they might know they're a boy, and they might know they're a girl, and that's from when they go to the bathroom. Really, that's the only time they, would know the difference. They don't know what it means sexually, right? So my question is how is that different? What they are doing, how is that different than showing obscene material to a minor, which is a crime? Introducing children to pornography, which is called grooming. That's exactly what it is. And not only is they're trying to strip the parental rights away, and that's in an effort to undermine the nuclear family that was established by God. They're wanting to remove anything to do with God, and in the name of secularism. And a lot of people say they're atheists, and I don't believe that. I think they believe in the worship of self, which is humanism, right? And that is a religion. I think atheism is dead. That is a religion. That is, I'm going to worship me and not anybody else. And, it's just horrific the things that are going on, and these kids that should be protected. And from our standpoint in law enforcement or EMT, when you see something, now you can numb yourself to things that involve adults, right? Even though it's hard, you have nightmares, you get in public places and you start to get panicky, you know. I was in Royal King, and somebody dropped something, and I almost punched a guy that was standing behind me simply because I thought it was a gunshot. And then I turn around and he's like right there. First, yeah, it was just the way I reacted. And, I think that guy should have maybe placed himself. There is such a thing as personal space, right? If you're in a store and you're riding the shoulders of the person in front of you, don't be surprised when they turn around, and probably say some vulgar things to you. What I'm saying is respect others' personal space. I turn around after hearing that, and this guy's just like right up on top of me. So in my mind, I'm thinking I got to punch him, right? I've got to get him away from me, and now, oh, thank goodness I didn't, but it was just the moment where you hear that, that sounds like a gunshot, and then you revert back to everything that you've experienced. And so you are, um it's sad, honestly. And I think a lot of us in law enforcement, a lot of us and first as first responders, and that is to include, the ER as well. But I think a lot of us are, um, we feel as if we have something wrong with us when we go out. If we get panicky in Walmart, or if you get, you feel like, y'all know exactly what I'm talking. I don't have to try to explain it, but when y'all go, when y'all see those things, and especially, okay, now let's talk about the wife side of things, the partner, and by partner, I'll be clear, man and woman, right? So if your husband is in some sort of first responders, and the just try to be a little more understanding of, you may not understand. And I think the first and most, the biggest point of that in a relationship, is the feeling that your partner, your husband, won't talk to you. They close up and they don't say anything. And again, I've said it before, but with law enforcement, if any of you are law enforcement, or you have a family member that is, um, you know, when you'll see them come home, and you'll see they shut down, they close up, right? And then if you want to hear a bunch of different stories, I think, my wife had said it to me once before, but if I want to hear anything that's going on at work, we have to wait till your friends are around. And if you've noticed that in any events, my policemen are always stacked up, right? They're always together. They're always in a group. And sometimes that is excluding, even if they don't outright like move their chair, they exclude their wives or husbands from that discussion. And it's not, you just, I guess it's similar to being, when you rely on somebody that, with your life, then you tend to develop a closer bond, right, with those people. And I don't know what it is. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a 20-year cop, right? Almost. And, I serve, I have served. I've been through very traumatic things. I've seen some bad stuff. We all have. I don't have to, we're not getting in a competition of storytelling here, where, this is meant for us to come together and to grow. And, the moment, even if you do it for yourself, if you are the service member, which, or the spouse or the family of, um, try to just, I'm talking to you directly, right? And that's why you should cleave into, like, I know we just started the chaplaincy at my department, where I am the chaplain, and I'm also a pastor. And not only that is, I operate on the SWAT team. I raise a family. I do this online stuff, and I don't do it so I can say, look at all the jobs that I do, or look at everything that I've been through. But if you're in law enforcement or first responder at all, again, w- but I can speak from law enforcement experience, not really firemen. Although I have been in a few house fires with those guys, and phew, I mean, I don't know how they do it. It's a terrifying thing. There one quick, I was with a fireman. He'd got there in the truck, and so this house is fully involved, and they were screaming somebody's inside. So he's in there in a polo, right? So he pulls up, and I'm like, Where's the fire truck? Like, what are you gonna do with a pickup truck, right? And he's like, Well, I got to go in, and I'm like, You don't have anything on, right? And he said, well, I mean, I don't have time. I mean, there's no. So I said, well, I can't let you go in there by yourself. Stupid of me to say. So I go in behind him, and next thing I know, he's yelling at me. And on the best of days, you couldn't really understand him coherently anyway. He just, when he talked, he kind of, you know. So he was pushing me out of the house, and he was yelling at me to get out. And I just listened. I mean, what am I gonna do? I can't arrest the fire. So, anyway, so he shoves me out, and the next thing you know is this big little fireball comes out, and it goes up. And what had happened, I guess they call that a flash or whatever. And had we been in there, it would have killed us. And and I was, what is them, uniforms made out of, like, polyester, some crap like that. But it was almost melted. Like, I mean, it was that hot. And So we've been in situations like that. You know, I've been in another situation in a fire, if you're fire related, where a lady was, we thought, barricaded and or trapped inside. Me and an officer got there. We could hear her screaming from the outside. You know, house just on fire, fire flames coming out of the house. And I'm like, we can't get her out. We can't, you could hear her in there. So we turned around, we ran around the back of the house, and the only entrance that we could access was the basement door. And we kick it open and we go in. It was me and my partner, and the ceiling looked as if it was on fire, obviously, but it looked like waves. I don't know if you are in the fire service, you may know what that's called, but it looked like water, and it was the wildest thing, and extremely hot. And we were on our hands and knees, and I think I learned that in like fifth grade. And so I'm in my uniform and crawling through this basement, and she wasn't the neatest lady. And I get to I find the steps that go up into the kitchen, and I'm yelling at her. Uh, we knew her by name because, for whatever reason, it's a small community, right? So, the kitchen door, I don't know, maybe it was in my mind I was seeing this, but the kitchen door wasn't like broke. It was looked like it was melting. I mean, it was melting. I mean, just like a candle almost is what it looked like. Um, and I looked in there, she came over and you could see her at the top of the steps in the kitchen window or behind that door that was melting. And I yelled at her. I'm not going to mention her name, but I yelled at her and I said, jump down the stairs. I can get you out down here. And I was thinking, if she's older, she breaks something. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. We got to get her out. And, so I'm yelling at her. She finally looks at me and I'm waving my arm and she looks at me and I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you standing there? Yelling, and the house is creaking and moaning, and I mean, it's hot, hot, and she just looks at me and stares at me for a few seconds and then just breaks out into this maniacal laugh, right? And that's not made up. And she just starts laughing and then falls over, right? And my partner's like, "That's enough. We're getting out of here," and he yanks me out of the basement by my duty belt. That stuff right there, that right there gave me nightmares for quite a while. But it's just things like that that we need to jail and bond over in law enforcement and even our families. And I'm not saying it's okay to box your family out when you go home. The opposite, and this isn't coming from somebody that just assumes or that doesn't know. This is coming from somebody that's lived that life for a long time. I've been in my faith a long time. I've been in law enforcement a long time. There's hardly a situation that you can mention that I haven't seen. And that's only because after 20 years of it, I mean, you're going to run across things that you wouldn't expect in a small town. Um, and for our town to be as small as it is, it's extremely violent. And I don't understand the extent that people go through to hurt one another. And I think that's where we struggle as first responders. Is it's hard for you to wrap your head around why put this child in this cage and starve him to death. And by the way, that's not what I have back here. No children. I'm not making light, but those are my dogs. We brought them in from the outside, so because it's really cold here, and as you can see, they're toasty over there beside the fireplace. Look at him. His name is Zeus, and the little one is Otis. Zeus, see, pretty dog. Say we can't leave him outside in the cold. But anyway, so we have to have um, we need to keep each other accountable as well. If you see and cling to your chaplain in your department or your pastor. And if you're like me and you start your law enforcement career and you think, I don't need that religion crap, then eventually one day you're going to see where you were wrong. But that's what the chaplain is there for. He's there for you. And I'm different in the aspect that I'm actually a active sworn member, right? And not only that, but I am um sorry about that, guys. But I am I operate with the SWAT. I mean, I do the I've got many hats. I do other things within the department I don't say, and it's just it's difficult, and we need to hold each other accountable in our personal lives. Like if you got your partner's back on duty, have his back or her back off duty. Check on their mental health. Don't assume everybody's as tough as you are. We had one guy that just completely, phew, I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, the dude, anyway. So that stigma that we have encountered, especially the older cops such as me, um, that you are weak, or they will openly call you a bad word, um, if you seek help. And what I like about that is now that seems to be changing, at least within our department. And I want to be a part of that. And, we as policemen, it's hard for us. And I've had so many questions. How do you preach? And and I was on a talk show, a radio show here, and the producer asked me, "How do you turn it off?" And then he elaborated, "And how do you turn cop off and turn pastor on?" And that's very difficult. Very good question. And because as a policeman or in first response, you get callous. You just see so much that is your brain's defense mechanism, and you just get callous and cold. And so then you turn that around, and you're supposed to be an example of Christ, right? And in your Christian walk, and that is so hard to do as a policeman because it requires you to do and say things that you wouldn't ordinarily say. Anybody who's been in first responder, but more again geared towards law enforcement. If you are um, engaged with someone and you're sir and ma'am and please do not work all the time. It does not work all the time. If it does where you're from, great. Don't move, because if you go to any other police agency, it does not. And and I think that is the way that they were treated growing up, and they associate the way their parents talk to them in abuse, with dressing them with cuss words and get the blank over here and shut the blank up, and they address that, or they correlate that with authority. And so, in order for us to gain control of the situation, that's the language we have to use. And it's like immediately, they snap and they start listening, and you're like, "Why are you making me talk like that? Why couldn't you just listen?" And we ask ourselves that all the time. I mean, it's but you and law enforcement, fire service, EMT, the paramedics included in that, medical staff, all these guys. I mean, it's easy for you to complain about getting a ticket, right? You don't know what these guys are going through. Um, you don't know what they've been through that shift. So while you're complaining about your what they say first world problems, they've already been through three deaths in a shift, and maybe a child, but not once do we ever stop and think of the policeman as human. So in order to shut that down, we become inhuman. And I have a tattoo across my back, and it says "barely human." And that's the way I felt at the time. And I didn't feel like I had the emotions that a normal human had. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and end that. I want you to know this is kind of like, it's a new podcast. It's not new, but it's the Narrow Way Ministry podcast on Spotify and Apple. And we are now going to be the preaching policeman, which is myself. And I think that will help maybe reach um, more people. It's more of a novel name, I guess. I thought it was catchy. Um, and I actually got that from Mr. Crowder. Well, the name came from myself, but the photo, hopefully, you'll see if I don't mess it up, will be the intro will be, the preaching policeman, and you know, never go to work. Final parting thoughts: never go to work angry at your family. Um, Never allow your husband or wife to go to work in this sort of service um, angry. Don't because if you are a family member of, one of these first responders, if you've never thought that the the shift they go on coming up may be the last shift you get with them or the last time you see them, so never leave on a bad note. And either way, um, it just makes the shift go by better, you know. But anyway, I love all y'all in Christ. I'm gonna be changing the name of everything from the Narrow Way Ministry. This should be going to the Christian Pilgrim profile, which I'll be trying to edit it and to get it on Spotify. I hope y'all enjoy it. I know it was short, however, it's more of a introduction type thing, with hopefully a new audience, along with the old ones that have been here with me from the jump. I love all of y'all in Christ. God bless.